Welcome to Close Watch, now a proud member of the Odd Pods Media Network. This is the show where we get to know our guests through the movies they love. I'm your host, Robert Yaniz Jr., and this is episode 25. As always, you can find more episodes of the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and other podcatchers, as well as crookedtable.com. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated. Today, we're discussing the 2002 musical Chicago, the last musical film to win Best Picture, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
As we continue discussing movie musicals, and I'm honored to welcome to the show the famous Ashley Grant. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I forget, did I pitch this to you or did you? Like, how did we arrive on Chicago as the movie we were talking about?
I had asked you about Wicked, and I said you probably already had that one taken,
And I was like, here's some other ones.
Yeah, and I chose Chicago because I have seen it no less than 37 times. I think today was number 37 that I watched it because you mentioned it was 2002. I was still working with you at AMC movie theaters.
That's right.
And when it came out in theaters, I was literally watching it every shift. Like I would ask for usher gigs. Ushers are the people that clean up your theater after you watch your movie. And so I asked for those shifts, and I was like, I want all the usher shifts because I would sneak to the theater and watch it all the time because I was obsessed with the movie.
It's so funny because I feel like we were around that time. We were on the cusp of sort of like a mini revival of movie musicals because Moulin Rouge had come out the year before. And then Chicago came out, and then we were kind of like, it seemed like it was going, they were blowing up again. We got Phantom a couple years later and Rent and a few others. And then now, as we're talking, like everything's cyclical every 20 years, like slasher films every 20 years. They're like, oh, did you realize you can make a movie like this? Yeah, we did that 20 years ago. There was a lot of them. And so now with Mean Girls, Wonka, Wicked, I feel like we're now like musicals. There's an audience for it. And like, imagine that. So yeah, that's funny that's sort of like Chicago was like the last era of movie musical boom. And I do remember working there and looking over to like the Moulin Rouge one popping in, and they're doing like, spectacular, and being like, what the hell is this movie? And then walking out and like just to go doing a theater check, as we call it. And then Chicago being like, I don't understand all the hype about this thing, because it was already like winning all these awards, and it was kind of there was a lot of buzz behind it, and seeing it like out of context to be like, I don't know, maybe when I see it from beginning to end I'll get it. And it is one of those that like you just kind of get wrapped up in, which I think is interesting. I want to, before we go more into Chicago, explain the famous Ashley Grant, the moniker, for people that haven't heard you on other podcasts.
Sure. Well, the Reader's Digest version is I am Ashley Grant, and I was a freelance writer I started in 2007. And while I was writing, I kept getting gigs, and I couldn't ever quite hit that mark where I was getting full-time income. And fast forward a couple of years, I think it was 2009, maybe 2000. No, it was 2011. And I met this guy. He was lovingly known as Ron from the Dawn. It was the Dawn Cesar. He was a concierge there. And he and I kept bumping into each other at different events that I was covering for the news. I was working as a website affiliate for what was it called? Metro Mix. Goodness, it's been a day. And it's also 20 years ago. So like, exactly. At least it feels that way. Maybe 2000 years since, it's been, this is our 364th day of the year. In 2025, it's been a long year. Anyway, so basically he and I kept bumping into each other, and at one of the events I was covering for Metro Mix, he blurted out, "It's the famous Ashley Grant." And needless to say, he plugged me with way too much white wine that night, and I accidentally ordered my business cards with famous Ashley Grant instead of Ashley Grant that night, because I needed them that night, and I just happened to order them that night. And when they arrived, I'm like, crap, now what do I do? Well, and I thought, yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give them out, because people are either going to laugh or, whatever. They won't forget who I am.
Right.
And it was the first year I made full-time income as a freelancer. And I was like, you know what? I'm buying the domain, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really funny. The other thing that I think is interesting is that you talked about in the past about wanting to be internet famous and all of that.
Yes.
Which
And
what does that even mean in 2025? First of all, because I know that
yeah.
it's been a while since you started kind of espousing that that was your mission.
Yes.
Is that
And
still the
it's
mission?
always
And then what does that mean? Because now it's like the internet has turned into a very different beast
beast.
than it was 20
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah,
Yeah, I used to joke that I wanted to be internet famous, but not Kardashian famous. And now my definition of internet famous is famous in your niche for converting the type of people that you actually want to interact with.
right.
So I don't need to be the next TikToker that gets famous for drinking ocean spray while being on a skateboard down the road, singing a what Stevie Nicks song. I don't need that. I need
Sounds pretty fun though.
yeah, it does sound pretty
If
fun.
I
I
could
would
pull it
totally
off,
break
I
a
would try.
I was gonna say I would totally break a bone, but but to me, like what my definition of internet fame that I'm looking for is to really find and connect with the people that are like-minded individuals that I can actually help. And so what I've been doing with my clients is trying to teach them how to be their version of internet famous to get to their ideal client. And so that's kind of what it means now. It was never a vanity metric. It was always just a, trying to find my place in the interwebs. And
Yeah.
now I think I've kind of settled on what I really want. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Uh, I also think it's funny too that the movie we're talking about with the famous Ashley Grant is really about people who are all obsessed with being famous.
Yes, and they're looking for the ocean spray. Well, they need to
Yeah,
sponsor you for me saying that
Kardashian.
twice now. Yeah, they want to be the Kardashian. Or in this case, the Bianca Censori, who was nude on the Grammy red carpet
Yeah,
last night. What in the actual hell? We're
but
recording
doesn't
this
I
the
feel
day
like
after.
I feel like every picture I see of her, she's basically and I use air quotes, wearing some version of not
Yeah,
clothes like that,
yeah, yeah, and
essentially.
it left nothing to the imagination.
Or
And
it's like pasties and that's it. Like that's kind of
yeah,
her vibe. I don't
two
know.
band-aids and a cork. I mean,
Pretty much.
she definitely gave everybody the razzle dazzle.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they want to be famous in this movie, and it costs a man his life. As we spoiler alert. Is it even spoiler if it's 20 years later? Like, come on.
Well, and the musical was 50 years ago, I think this year that the
Yeah, and I
musical
saw the
debuted.
musical live and I hated it.
Okay, so let's start there. What did you see the musical after the movie, I assume, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you went in with what was your initial reaction when you first saw the movie? And then I guess what were your expectations going into the musical?
When I saw the movie, I was obsessed. I still, had the dancer background in my head, the singing for the stage, the, tap dancing and all the things, like wearing the costumes. So seeing the movie, it was like all of the things I had done as a 12-year-old dancer come to life.
Right.
And it's why, in fact, you and I, back in our karaoke days, that's why I always sang all that jazz
Yeah.
because I wanted to be Velma Kelly, but not a killer. but but yeah, so that's what drew me to it is just the razzle dazzle, the pizzazz. But I saw the musical on Broadway, or not Broadway. It wasn't Broadway. It was off Broadway. It was an off Broadway. Maybe that was my mistake, is it was an off Broadway production, and it was one of the original Roxy Harts that
Oh
was
wow.
performing, and we're talking. She was like 60 performing. God
Wow.
forgive me for saying that, but there is such a thing as ageism once you get to a certain point. When you don't have the lung capacity to actually sing the songs that
Hmm.
everybody's expecting. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons it was such a disappointment for me is I was expecting to hear like the same oomph.
Right.
And I've seen several shows on the stage live, and this just I don't know if it was because it wasn't the Broadway version, if it was because it was off Broadway and there wasn't enough of the scenery and the props that they normally have in their standard theater, but it just was awful. And I walked away going, I want to go watch the movie again. That's just the truth. Now, Wicked, on the other hand, I freaking love live and love the movie.
I
And
haven't seen it live. We're going in March. And
Oh,
because
good for
because
you. I'm
I have an aunt in the Bronx. We're gonna go up north. We're gonna visit her. She's gonna watch our kids, and we're gonna go see Wicked on Broadway.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
I'm excited.
fantastic. Just don't sing.
Yeah. Well, no, not in the theater.
Yeah.
I own the movie on 4K now, so I'll do that when I get back home.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I think it's also this is the kind of movie that I think for a while, for a long time, people were like, well, how are they going to make a movie out of that exactly? Because a lot
Yeah.
of it's in her head versus just like the stage production that's sort of, uh, you know, um, when they're performing in the movie, they're just performing directly to the audience. Like, how
Yeah.
do you pull that off in a movie? And I think this was one of the earlier times where I crystallized, oh, that's what film editing is. Like
Yeah.
this movie is a triumph of film editing and
Yeah.
like cutting back and forth between the theatrical version of what's happening, which a lot of it is in Roxy's perspective from her kind of uh let's say slanted point of view.
Mhm.
And sort of and the more grounded, like kind of gritty real life version of it. I think part of what I think is the appeal of the musical and then of course the film is it is that like we all want to, whether we have famous in our name or not, we all want to be famous. Everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be recognized and feel special. And this is kind of like that, but also like a dark, twisted, kind of dirty, satirical version of it. So it has
Yeah.
like that scandalous kind of twist to it. Um, and so it feels a little transgressive where you're like, man, I want Roxy Hart to get what she desires. I want her to get her show and get away with this. But also, do I? Like
Yeah. Like, is that bad to root for the bad guy?
well, but when my wife and I were talking about this yesterday, because she really loves this movie as well. Um, sh- like who is not the bad guy? Like they're all there's the only good people in this movie are Amos and the Hungarian
Yep.
lady who ends up hanging. The
Yeah.
only person that's innocent, and I think it's just because Billy is like, well, there's a language barrier. What am I supposed to do there?
Yeah.
As far as selling her to the press.
Yeah.
Um, what's your take on sort of the gray, like it's not even gray morality, the like dark kind of comedic edge that this movie has?
I think it kind of goes back to the whole if it bleeds, it leads thing. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I come from newspaper and magazine background, and so we're used to the, um, give someone something that they can chew on, that they want to see. You want the in your face, like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. And I think that's what made the appeal of it is it's all the dark things that sometimes go through your head of, I bet you if I did, such and such, I could make this happen, and we get to see it play out. And I don't know if it would necessarily play out that way for real, but then again, at the same time, we have seen it. We have seen scandals happen, and
Yeah.
people get crazy internet famous for all the wrong reasons. I mean, if you watch any Swoop documentary, you get proof of that. But are you familiar with Swoop? Obsessed. The blue-haired gal that does YouTube documentaries. She goes deep dives on all
I
the
don't know. I
crazy.
don't know that I am. No.
Yeah, you got to check her out if you
Interesting.
ever want to just, catch all the tea of all the crazy things that are going on online. But yeah, she talks about how, like, for it's not drama, it's dangerous is her tagline. She always
Yeah.
talks about that. But what's bad is that these people that are online trying to get in front of people and get famous, the wrong kind of internet famous, they are using drama in bad ways, but yet we're seeing a glamorized version of it in
Mhm.
Chicago. And it's the naughtiness factor. It's kind of like what we talked about whenever I was on for the confidence game. You
Yeah.
kind of want the bad guys to win, and but in real life you wouldn't.
Yeah,
Maybe.
we talked about confidence, we talked about bandits. This is a pattern with the
Yeah,
movies that you're
apparently I like the
picking.
bad guys. Who knew?
I think you even I don't know, I think we talked about didn't we talk about Fight Club at one point?
Yes.
That's another one.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, you're fascinated by complicated, misguided people and their, like,
I think
whatever
it has a
their
lot to do
mission
with
is.
the fact
Yeah.
that yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I grew up Southern Baptist Christian, church every Sunday, trying to be the good girl. I mean, people called like the joke was Bible thumper. Like I kept being called
Yeah.
that in grade school, and so part of me always wanted to be bad, but I was too scared. I'm too good to be bad, so
Yeah.
so
No,
I'll live vicariously through all these terrible characters.
right, exactly. No, and the media connection is another thing that I flagged too, that we both worked in media, and the whole movie, it's like it's released in 2002 based on a musical from 1975 but set in the 20s. And yet here we are in 2025 watching it, and it still feels timeless, in that if they updated this, it would just be they want to go viral instead of they wanted the headline at the top of the newspaper and all of that. So I think
Absolutely.
it's really interesting to watch now. I'm like, wow, so human nature like really doesn't change that much.
It
It's
really
just
doesn't. I
the
mean,
technology does.
it really doesn't. I mean, the best case in point of that is Gypsy Rose. I mean, she gets her boyfriend to kill her mother, and then she gets a show. I mean, and like it's insane to me how this kind of stuff plays out, and yet we live vicariously through it because we know we would never do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild. Do you have a long background history? What's your history with movie musicals in general? Do you tend to be drawn towards the darker side of things, the Little Shop of Horrors, this one, like Sweeney Todd, like those kinds of like mayhem and chaos and murder and drama?
I don't know if that's necessarily the fact, or if it's just that I like
Because
the
I am. I guess
I
that's what I'm saying.
I
All those
like
movies
the
are great.
I like all the glitz and the glam and the shiny. That's why I
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
Moulin Rouge. I absolutely loved Moulin Rouge. I love Chicago. I loved Hairspray. My God, I loved
Hairspray's
Hairspray.
good.
Yes, and of course I love Wicked because it's all glitz and glam, and who doesn't want to go to Oz? Um, so yeah, I think I don't know if I would necessarily say I do go towards the dark as much as I go towards the glam, because I mean, even in Confidence that we talked about,
Yeah.
they were getting glamorous things. They looked like rock stars and gorgeous people, and who doesn't want to be the pretty people?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting that this was, as I mentioned earlier, the most recent musical to win Best Picture. So there was Oliver was 1968, and then this, and then nothing since. And
Yeah,
maybe Wicked, maybe the second Wicked, maybe something else. Like it feels like that's coming back around. And to your point about like the style, that's the Bob Fosse of it all. Like
yeah.
that's fully his sort of influence. Are you familiar with like all that jazz and some of his other stuff?
I'm a little bit, like just enough to sing the music to you,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not enough to like actually wax philosophical on his process.
Yeah, same. Like I feel like I grew up with a lot of with my because my mom really likes the movie All That Jazz,
Hmm.
but I've never gone back because it's actually kind of loosely about Bob Fosse.
Okay.
And so I've never gone back and revisited it, but I this made me kind of want to dig more into, well, what's Fosse's like background, like what is more of his body of work, because this is what I know from him the most, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's obviously because of movies are usually in my way in. Do you usually go to see the movie before you see a musical, or like is that what sparks an interest for you in seeing the stage musical, or how does that work? Because in this case, obviously the expectation threw that off.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't really get to see very many musicals until after high school. I think I saw Peter Pan live, and I saw um The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and I want to say Bedknobs and Broomsticks. I think I saw all three of those like at the Tampa Performing Arts Center live before like I started watching movies and stuff. But to be honest with you, the reason I was so drawn to movies before seeing it live on stage was honestly just accessibility. It was less expensive, especially since I worked there and got free tickets. It was easier to go and catch a movie than it was to try to get to the Tampa Bay Performing Arts Center, or let alone New York.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah, of course.
yeah, and the very first musical I got to see live on Broadway was Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and amazing, amazing show if you ever get the chance to see it. I highly recommend. But yeah, I think that was the big reason that I was so drawn to musicals as movies, because it was so easy to get to. Like, I could just go down to the theater. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that for me, a lot of times, like, I don't even feel drawn to listen to the Broadway cast recording unless I have either seen a movie or the stage musical, because I don't feel like I have the context, and I'm like, "This is gonna be wasted on me." Like,
Yeah.
it's so intertwined, the music and the images, especially when it comes to Broadway in
Mhm.
that way, that I'm like, you're never gonna appreciate it the same way, which I think is interesting. Uh, the so I mentioned the Oscar wins for this movie. This got six Academy Awards in 2003, including Best Picture. Like I said, of course, Catherine Zeta-Jones for Best Supporting Actress. Uh, when you watch this, are you rooting for Velma? Or are you rooting for Roxy? Are you rooting for both of them or neither? Like, who is your proxy when you're watching this movie? You're like, oh, I'm really on board for this person's journey, or like, if I was in this world, this would be me.
Well, it's funny, whenever I watched this younger Ashley, she was always rooting for Roxy. And recently, in the last couple years as I've watched it, I'm actually finding myself rooting for Velma and for Billy Flynn
Mhm.
and even Mama Morton. And I think that's interesting because, like, when we are presented with Mama Morton, Billy Flynn, and Velma Kelly, they are. It feels like, even though they're jerks in a lot of ways, they're more authentic.
Yeah.
And Roxy, to me, as I've gotten older and the more I watch her, I'm like, yeah, she's a pretentious little bitch, and and I don't like her. so so I'm glad she didn't, hang, but but yeah, just it's funny because I didn't expect that as I got older to have my views change, but I guess, does that mean I'm growing up?
I think so. Scary.
Shit. Quick, we gotta tell a
Terrible.
dirty fart joke or something.
um, I do. I think this is like the perfect movie for, when you see those like metrics and it's like, oh, chaotic neutral and chaotic evil or chaotic
Yeah,
good or true neutral or whatever. Like, this would be a fascinating movie to be like, all right, so where do all of these people fall? Because some of them are less evil, and so, like, I wouldn't necessarily say Billy Flynn is evil. He's
yeah,
opportunistic, but
yeah,
he's like true neutral.
yeah.
He's like, if that whatever happens to you happens. I'm just here to get, all I care about is love, he says.
Yes, when in reality, love is money.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So he's just there to fulfill his role in the process. If it
yeah,
wasn't him, it would be someone else, for example. So like, I guess the police officer played by Colm Feore would be like, like, I don't know, chaotic, like true good, I guess. I don't know. But I
or
think that,
chaotic lawful, something
yeah,
like that.
lawful good, yeah, lawful good.
Yeah,
And then yeah, it's there's I think that the movie does a really great job at giving you like a little bit of everybody's perspective
yeah,
all the way through the process. Like, oh, here are the reporters, and here's they feed on the story, and then here's, Mama Morton, and she's kind of making her own little kingdom
yeah.
on Murderous Row, and then the lawyer, and then, poor Amos, like out in the cold, completely clueless at the end of the movie, thinking he's gonna go home with his wife as they
Bless
get
his
ready for
heart.
their baby.
I
Uh,
live in Kentucky now, and bless his heart, like that. Oh, bless his heart.
it's I like that the movie just like it seems like it tracks like the whole process of from arrest to like verdict, like what is that arc, and how many different systems are affected by it. And I think it does a really like succinct job of being like, here's where everybody fits in.
Yeah.
Would you say?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we see all the different aspects of it and how things had to play out for things to go a certain way. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite movies of all time. If she got on the train she would find out her husband's cheating. If she doesn't, she never knows.
Right.
And like, have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And I love the fact that in this movie we see, like, if it had gone just this way, it would have been a completely different story. Or if
Yeah.
this thing had happened, she would have hanged, that kind of thing. But it is funny how we are rooting for the killers the whole time to
Yeah.
like get them off.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially having worked in media, I think it's fascinating for me to be like, we'll get into this when we get into our song choices more. The way that is all twisted and manipulated, which, again, is part of growing up. I think when you're a kid, you're like, oh, it's written and this is the way it is. You're like, there's a lot that goes into that being the story
This
that's
is the
told.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
the Mandalorian. This is the way.
And in this age now, especially now, of like misinformation, and it's like, I
What's
saw on
that?
Facebook that this was this, and like everything kind of people living in different worlds
Yeah.
based on where they're getting their information from. This felt like particularly salient.
Yes. Yes, and I love how, I mean, it's so perfect to say that whenever you think about the last scenes, not the last scene, but like the last of the scenes when the little kid is sitting there with two sets of newspapers and one says innocent and one says guilty. And once they, say, little wave the white flag, oh, okay, then throw out the innocent one.
Yeah.
Like, just, it's wild to me that was the thing. Like,
Yeah.
you have both ready so that everybody can jump at the chance as soon as the iron's hot, get it to them. Just because that's still the case today. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we see, when the Super Bowl happens, they have both sets of both teams listed as the champions on two different shirts, and whichever
Yep.
shirt is sold at the end, the other half goes to kids in Africa or something. Like, I remember watching some documentary about all these kids, and I think it was Africa. They were wearing the losing team, but it said champions, and it's like, that's wild.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
At least they do something positive with it, I guess,
I guess, but
rather
yeah.
than just like burn them all or something. I don't
Of
know.
course, nowadays, if someone gets a hold of those, they sell it anyway
Yeah,
because
right.
they think it's funny.
On
But
eBay, alternate history. This could have happened.
alternate realities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And if I have the location wrong of where they send it, I apologize. I just am going based on memory, and I'm getting older, as I said, so it could be wrong.
Is there a particular moment or line in this movie that you find particularly funny that jumps out to you? Because we're talking about kind of the darkly comic, like farcical nature of the way that this thing presents how society works and how the system is corrupt.
Honestly, there's a couple. I mean, obviously the line from Mama Morton's, "When you're good to Mama, Mama's good to you." I mean, it's all about reciprocity, right? It's like, you scratch
Yeah,
my back, I'll scratch yours, and that really does still play out
yeah,
today.
yeah.
So that's a big one. And I had another one, and now it's gonna. Oh, that it's all a circus. It's a three-ring circus. It goes back to the whole, Shakespeare, all the world's a stage, act well your part. It's We're all giving everybody our version of a circus, and we're trying to misdirect you if we feel like we're being threatened, or we don't want to be seen. So, like, don't look at me whenever I'm looking bad, but look at me whenever I'm doing good. So I guess those are the two that stick with me the most. And of course, all that jazz, because I say it all the time. Because it's a good way to like wrap up a statement, like, and all that jazz. Like, you're talking about multiple different things, and and
Yeah.
all that jazz.
I always forget when I watch it that it starts the night of, like, like Velma's literally committed the murder,
Yeah.
and then she's like walking in to go to work,
And washing
basically.
her hands.
Like, crap, like, get rid of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and she has obviously goes for an insanity plea where
Yeah.
she's like basically, essentially, she's like,
Yeah.
oh, I walked in and then I saw them and I don't know what
I
happened. Like,
completely blanked
I
out. I
completely
can't remember
blacked
a
out.
thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So watching everybody twist the system in their own little way. The part with the baby always cracks me up, where she's like, oh, I
Absolutely.
just hope I didn't hurt the baby.
Yeah. It's genius if you think about it.
Baby.
And if I ever need something like that, I'll have to remember it.
Cut to Velma across the way. She's like, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, because she's so jealous that she didn't think of it.
Right.
She didn't think of the maniacal way of getting more publicity.
How do you feel about the sort of rivalry between Velma and Roxy? Because like you said, like your feelings on it changed over time. I
Yeah.
think those two, like I always felt it was somewhat unfair that Catherine Zeta-Jones got the Oscar and Renee Zellweger didn't, because I thought they're both really strong in this, and
Yeah.
but I get it, because I think Velma is like the showier part. It's got the most iconic number from the musical right up front, and it's just a very distinctive look and style to that character.
Yeah,
Uh,
and what's funny is, when
yeah,
Renee Zellweger was at the Oscars, you could tell she really believed she was going to win.
yeah,
She had a look about her, she had and then Nicole Kidman wins it. And I didn't watch the movie that she won for, but a lot of critics were saying, well, Nicole deserved it more because she actually, acted. But I just I their their frenemy situation, I get it. I really
yeah,
do, because
yeah.
sometimes you work with people you can't stand, but you make it work. You get a synchronous
What
relationship.
Which is why there's the line at the end where she's like, "Oh, it's not gonna work because I hate you," and she's like,
Yeah.
"It's one business where that doesn't matter at all."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they
And
kind
I've
of at least
definitely had that in my
they,
career. I'm sure you have too.
yeah. They kind
Yeah.
of reach at least an understanding, I guess, by
Yeah.
that point. And it's funny you mentioned Nicole Kidman, who obviously won for The Hours, because
Yeah.
the next year, Renee Zellweger is in Cold Mountain with Nicole Kidman, and that's what she
Yeah.
wins the Oscar for. I think she's just like, whatever she does next, I'm gonna sign up for that,
Yeah.
and hopefully I'll find my way back here. And it worked out. But I also
And
think
she
it was
won
a
for supporting actress too, right?
yeah, 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 exactly.
Huh.
I also
So
and then
that's interesting.
I know
Because
it is
because
interesting.
it just makes me think about how, like, for a minute there, I was starting to believe that I could only make money if I was ghostwriting. I couldn't make money if I had my name on it.
Mhm.
And it became a thing for a while. Vanity, whatever. But I'm trying to come back into my own and have my name on the marquee.
Yeah, that's great. Your name
I
goes
don't know if
first.
that's great, but I'm trying.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the weirdly the arc that Roxy has is that she's sort of humbled throughout the course of this. That by the end, she's just like just trying to make her way, and has that moment with Velma where she sees Velma's in like the fishnets that are all torn up because she's probably been all over town doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's in a way, it's like, okay, if they learned anything, this is it. They're
Yeah.
like, we're famous, we're gonna be awesome, blah blah blah. We're gonna be headlining shows and all this stuff. And it's like, it's also to what you said earlier, being Kardashian famous.
Yeah.
Mama has that. I think it's Mama who has the conversation with her, like, oh, they'll go see you in anything. You shot the guy and got away with it, and he's like,
Yeah.
she's like, that's a freak act. Like, I'm better than that. And it's like at the end, they're just like, come and see us, the two killer dillers,
Yeah.
and they're
Exactly.
on
Because
on stage with machine guns, shooting
yeah,
the light.
because that
Got to
if
work
it
with what you
bleeds, it
have.
leads.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's one of the questions that I had that I thought usually I ask, like, is there like, what do you think? Where did I had this? What does this movie kind of? How does it like relate to the way you see the world or your perspective or things like that? And I think it is kind of what we're saying. It's like it's the media side of it. It's like having worked in media, like that's how it is. That's how it moves. Like can't
Mhm.
beat fresh blood on the walls, like he says. And Lucy Liu
Yeah.
does her thing, and nope, now it's a triple homicide. Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody's topped that yet.
Daenerys, no less.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it is that. It's like, ooh, you want to be famous, but like careful, careful what you wish for. Like in
I
a
think
way.
it kind of speaks to, like, one of the deepest human needs, though, of needing to be seen and validated.
Yeah.
Um I mean, like, I started with the famous Ashley as like a joke moniker just to keep my name in people's heads. But
Right.
I mean, I think it's also, I didn't want them to forget me. I don't want to, like, okay, I'm going to take you back to high school. I was in a drama group, and at the end of the year, they had this thing called the Paper Plate Awards. And on the paper plates, they wrote out different awards for every person in the drama group. And I was the only person in the entire group of, I want to say, 30 people who did not get one.
Oh.
And I looked at the person who was hosting it and I said, I guess I'm the most likely to be forgotten. And I threw my towel or whatever it was that I had, my napkin, threw it on the table, and I just walked out. I don't even remember if I paid. Like I was that mad, and and that kind of sits with you,
Yeah.
when something like that happens. It speaks to that need of, and I think that's why Mr. Cellophane like really sits with me, is because we do want people to see us when they walk by, and having that moment of no one cares,
Yeah.
that freaking hurts. And so I think that's what really this movie boils down to, is that need to be seen and validated. I mean, I already said that, but I'm gonna say it again because it's just that's really how it wraps up for me.
Yeah. I think that's part of why I don't like that song that much, because it resonates too much. I'm like, too close. Don't like it. Because
It's
that
my cry
was,
with ice cream in my hands song. Like, it
yeah,
is definitely the I'm menstrual, give me chocolate and give me ice cream, and the world doesn't care song.
yeah. Yeah, so, like, for me, I usually be like, "Oh, Amos, like, whatever," and I when I'm watching the movie, I try and brush him off also, because
Yeah,
it's the alternative is connecting to how he's feeling, which is very relevant to how
and
I've
very
felt over the years.
comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, "No, no, this guy sucks. Get him out of here. Ha ha. Andy."
Yeah, we don't
That's the
care about
stance.
you, Andy.
Yeah, that's the stance I take when I watch it, because I'm like,
Yeah,
"Nope, don't wanna think about that. Keep
because
going."
it's
I like,
heartbreaking.
yeah,
It's devastating, and watching, I think that's another reason why, like, in this particular rewatch, I was so pissed at Roxy, because 'cause I'm like, "You're standing in front of a broken man, and you're just asking, 'What? What do you want?'" Like, "Really? Are you that naive? Are you that superficial?" And yes, she
she is.
is. Yeah.
"Yeah, they didn't even want my picture," she says at
Yeah.
the end,
They didn't
which is
even wanna
really
put me
funny.
on YouTube.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, goodness. And I think too, that's the one side of it is the fame and the wanting to be seen. The other the other thing is just like, as a creative person, you're like, we're both creative people. If you're a writer or a podcaster or a filmmaker or whatever the case may be, you're like, I want my stuff to get out there. Like, I want to be known for something. Like, it kind of dovetails off of the wanting to be seen, but it's also like, I have skill, right? I have talent. Look, listen
I
to
am
my
important,
podcast.
people like
Yeah,
me.
yeah, exactly. And because we
Yeah.
one of the movies that I've covered recently on this podcast was Tick Tick Boom, which is similarly not. It doesn't seem like a movie that's similar, because that's explicitly about the creative process, but it is kind of related in that thematically, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's part of it too. It's like, we all want to be successful at whatever our thing is, and
Whatever it is.
sometimes we have to, like, just walk away with our tail between our legs and be like, all right, you other successful person, let's work together. Maybe we co-host a podcast. People will listen, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've been doing some writing about how to get popular on Instagram. And the one thing that keeps coming up in the research is, oh, well, if you can't make a name for yourself, collaborate with influencers.
Yeah.
Seriously? The only way I can matter is with someone else? Like, can't I be enough on my own?
And there's that end, there's that great scene where uh she Velma is not wanting to go and, like, ride on Roxy's coattails, where
Yeah.
Roxy is suddenly the big hot thing, and then she goes over and does that whole long pitch about, like, "Hey, I have this great double act, like, just jump in. Like, I already,
Yeah.
all you have to do is show up and do the moves, and, like, I already have the whole thing planned out. Like, I can't do it alone, etc." Which is it's funny, because the tables continually turn throughout the movie. And she has that great reaction where she says, "Oh, by the way, like, you made the paper too, right in the back, right next to the obituary."
Yeah.
It's like
7 words long.
7 words, and she's like, "Wow," which is just great, great performance by Renee Zellweger.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we get into our rankings, I wanted to talk about this cast a little bit. We mentioned Renee Zellweger and Catherine Zeta-Jones, Richard Gere as Billy Flynn, who shockingly was not nominated, and I don't understand why. It's something that is, I don't know, does the Academy just not like Richard Gere, or what is going on with that?
Maybe
Because
it's because of something he said a long time ago. It was, I think it was in the Pretty Woman days. He said something to the effect of, "I don't like happy endings in movies." And that has been in my mind ever since I heard it. And I probably totally butchered the quote, but yeah, it's like it's fascinating to think that someone actually thinks that way. And
Yeah.
so maybe that just pissed off the Academy.
Pretty Woman has a happy ending though, so I don't understand.
Does it though?
Kind of ish. It's presented as a happy
It's
ending.
presented as a happy ending.
This
We'll go
movie
with
is
that.
presented as a happy ending also.
It is.
I don't know how long their show is going to remain popular until, another heiress takes out a couple more people or
No, you
whatever.
just need another duo of killers and then famous fleeting.
It's also funny too because immediately after Roxy gets off, I think someone just like on the courthouse steps like shoots her husband and her lawyer or something.
And
Like
did
it's
you
just like,
notice her hair was
yeah,
done like Roxy's?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so she kills
Everybody's
her
getting the
husband.
Roxy.
Yep.
Everybody's getting the Roxy Hart.
Yep.
She's the so like, that's what we're saying is Roxy Hart was the original Joker. If you've seen the Joaquin Phoenix movie,
Oh my god.
it's just like
That's
everybody wants to
hysterical.
be. There you go.
Yeah.
It all
So if you
comes
get
back.
Roxy hearted.
We mentioned Queen Latifah as Mama Morton. So
Love her.
John C. Reilly as Amos, and then
Yes.
like Lucy Liu briefly, Taye Diggs briefly, but also throughout.
Yeah.
And then it's a stacked cast across the
I
board.
loved Taye Diggs in this movie. Like
I do too.
even though he did not have as much of a prominent role, like he steals every scene he's in. Like he just has such a presence about him. Like he's hot. Yeah.
Yeah. I like Taye Diggs, and also shout out to Taye Diggs for I think following everyone on Twitter.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like Taye Diggs was following everybody, and it was really
the original
impressive.
collaborator.
Really, like literally, like I was like, Taye Diggs is following me. That's cool. I know who that is.
That's awesome.
Maybe he wants to collab.
That's funny.
So obviously there's a lot of great music in this movie. We've kind of touched on some of it, but let's discuss some of our favorites.
Let's talk about Six, baby. Let's talk about flicks and me. Let's talk about what the good films and the bad films are to me. Let's talk about Six. Let's talk about Six.
I love the reactions this gets.
That was you, wasn't it?
That was me.
You laid down those vocals.
That was 6 of me, actually.
Oh my!
It's so the recording, whatever. We don't have to get in the weeds on this, but every line I say, I added another voice. So by the end, there's 6 versions of me singing. Anyway, yes, let's talk about 6. So what do you have at number 6?
Number 6 is a tie for me between Mr. Cellophane and Razzle-Dazzle.
Nice.
And the reason that's my tie is it's the exact opposite. It's like the razzle-dazzle is look at me, I'm amazing. Everybody has to look at me because look at all this glitz and glam. And then Mr. Cellophane is I'm nothing. I don't matter.
Oh, hey, Andy, you're still here? Yeah, I'm still here.
I'm still here.
And this was also a big this, and then a few years later with Talladega Nights. This was like the launch of John C. Reilly as a person, a comedic or dramatic talent that like everybody knew, because he had been in a lot of stuff before this, but he was just kind of that guy popping up and like Never Been Kissed and things like that. And then he's in this, gets the Oscar nomination. Then he becomes like Will Ferrell's buddy in a bunch of movies.
The romance begins.
Yeah, and the bromance begins. And then we get Step Brothers and all that. Walk Hard, which is a great movie that I'm going to have to talk about at some point.
Well, if you want to talk about Step Brothers ever, if you've already done it, never mind.
I haven't.
Because, I mean, have you seen that they actually had a California wine mixer? Like, just
did they really?
Last year, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
I like that.
I want to go to one.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yes.
Boats
Watch Sideways and then go to the California wine mixer.
What's the song? Boats and Hose, right?
Boats and Hose.
Yeah.
Boats and Hose.
Something.
I've got both. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't have either.
Sounds like a party.
Those
are great picks. I already spoke on why Mr. Cellophane is a no-go for me in some ways. But for me, I have number 6. I had Funny Honey, which was close. There was a couple I almost put there, and I was like, I got to put like I feel like it's an underappreciated one. Yeah. And I love that it's so early in the movie. I love that it starts as a devotion of love, like, oh, that, like, she's singing about how great Amos is and how true he is to her, and then he inadvertently rats her out halfway through the
He
song,
shut off
and
his
then
trap.
it takes a complete turn. I can't stand that sap and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I love all of that. I think it's so funny. It's like right off the gate, I think All That Jazz you can listen to as a out of context, and it's just a great song. And
Yeah.
it just not only sets the tone for the movie, but the style and the mystique and everything that we're talking about. But Funny Honey, I think, lays in the sense of humor that you're going to get throughout. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, so this is just going to be ridiculous. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
kind of. You
Yeah.
get it. They there.
And we see just how deceitful the woman is.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to pretend I'm a devoted wife, but screw you.
Right.
Unless I
Perception
get
and
mine.
reality. Perception and
Exactly.
reality. It's all about, like, what's the persona you can sell, you can spin, and this is before Billy Flynn gets involved. This is before she's in front of reporters, and she's already sort of like, all right, how can I cover this up and lie to my husband and the police, and kind of project this version of myself that I'm not.
Well, he was trying to burgle me.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so funny. What did you have at number 5?
Number 5, I had When You're Good to Mama.
Nice. Why?
I love that one. I quote it a lot. I sing it a lot. Like to bounce to it.
Yeah. Latifah, you can never. Latifah's never a bad thing. A little
Yeah, you
Latifah.
can't go wrong with. I've loved her since UNITY.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Don't know if
also.
you're familiar with that song.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Which was a Wednesday, by the way.
Was it really? There you go.
That line is stolen.
From where? Where did you steal it?
Dane Cook. God.
Oh boy.
Like the worst
Wow.
person to ever steal from other comedians, I just stole from him. But at least I, unlike him, cited my source.
That's true. That's true.
Media.
You have more integrity than Dane Cook. That's that much you can.
It should be on a bumper sticker.
You can put that on your business card.
Yes, more
the famous
integrity than Dane Cook.
Yeah, exactly.
More integrity than Dane Cook. Oh my God.
We're really dating ourselves with UNITY, Dane Cook, and everything.
What was your number 5, Robert?
Number 5, I had Razzle-Dazzle.
Okay.
Just because, everything you were saying, like how it's the opposite of it's so removed from reality that now it's literally become a circus.
Yeah.
Obviously, having worked in media, especially, like the way that everything is like misdirection and all of this, I think is really, really interesting and really fun. You mentioned Wicked. I've been obviously watching Wicked a lot. That whole thing is spoilers for Wicked, I guess. The Wizard of Oz. The wizard is an illusionist, a magician, a con man, right up your alley, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Who knew?
You're kind of guy.
Yeah, that's funny.
And so this is just kind of showing off how Billy Flynn is sort of in that same vein. And I don't think it's probably going to be on either of our rankings because it's not really a full musical number, but like the tap dance that he does,
yes,
is sort of an extension of Razzle-Dazzle a little bit.
I gotta say that him in that role kind of made me fall back in love with Richard Gere. Like,
yeah.
Because like I said, I had been turned off from him for so long because of I hate happy endings.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was a sex joke. Never mind. Anyway, told you I had to bring some sort of an immaturity back because I'm feeling very old. But anyway.
Yeah. And to the point of the editing that we mentioned, there's moments there where he's interviewing Amos on the stand, and it's Amos sitting there, and then it cuts back to Billy, and then it cuts back to Amos, and he's got like the showgirl with her arm wrapped around him or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, I'm starting to get real confused. I'm getting really confused here. What's going on?" And it's like you sort of see like the reality kind of blend with it's so well done, and like it's one of those things where you're like, "Oh, this is why it won all those below the line sort of like technical categories at the Oscars." Like it's really intricately put together. What did you have at number 4?
Roxy.
Oh,
and a little fun fact, anytime I sang this back in high school and college days, I always changed Roxy to Ashley because
Mm,
same number of syllables.
nice. Well, in my household growing up, my family still calls me Robbie, and so it's even easier because I also have to take the X out and put a double B, and so
There you
that
go.
was how I did that. So yeah, um, number 4, I had All That Jazz. I would have
Okay.
I would have put it higher, but I've done other episodes where it's been very basic, and the number 1 has been very like, oh, it's gonna be this. I'm like, yeah, it's that. Of course, it's that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, I might put some more personal ones, personal favorites, a little higher up, and slot All That Jazz in there. Obviously, it had to be in the 6 because it's iconic, and Catherine Zeta-Jones just sells it so hard in this. And there's a history with that character. BB Newirth won a Tony for the revival of Chicago in the
Okay.
90s for playing Velma Kelly. So there's a deep history behind that opening number, and it sets, like I said, it sets the tone for everything. So,
Yeah.
what did you have at number 3?
I'm dying to know if we got the same on either of them, like, or any of them.
We'll see.
Number 3, I did Cell Block Tango.
Okay. Well, we're
Yeah.
gonna see some overlap shortly.
Okay.
In
Well,
some of these.
maybe. But yeah, I chose Cell Block Tango because I mean that song's just iconic, and I love all the different parodies I've seen of it. Like, you know, Todrick Hall. I know a lot of people hate him, but the man is an artist. Like, he's a genius when it comes to certain art, and his parody he did with the Disney villains, like, iconic. Like, if you ever get the
I
chance to
have to
see it.
check. I wonder if
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen that. That sounds vaguely familiar. So now I need to go and look it up after this.
Yeah, it's truly iconic, and but just, I mean, I can't think of Chicago without thinking of Cell Block
Yeah.
Tango,
Yeah.
and meeting all the murderers.
I think that's Kai's favorite. Like, that's the
Yeah.
one where she's like, "Oh, I love this song. I love like the beat and the energy behind it." And then,
Yeah.
the big backdrop with all the ladies behind bars,
Mhm.
and all 6 of them have their. We get Maya, if you remember the R&B
Oh my
singer
god,
Maya.
I loved Maya growing up, and, like,
So did
I thought
I.
she was so underrated as an artist. I still feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean, just, yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah. She's great, and it's cool to see her in this movie.
And she
Uh
also sang in the Moulin Rouge song.
she sure did.
Yeah,
She sure did, with Pink
with,
and Christina
Christina
Aguilera
Aguilera.
and Lil' Kim and
Yeah,
Pink.
before
Yeah.
all the face changes.
Right. Number 3,
Can't
I
even
had.
recognize her anymore.
Yeah, well, that's again.
Anyway, back to you. Number
Time
3.
comes, yeah. Number 3, I had Roxy.
Okay.
So, like we said, I personalized it. I think it's Renée Zellweger's showcase moment. I'm pretty sure it was her Oscar clip.
Yeah.
Was something from this. You not only do you see her kind of put on her star persona for this, but it's like you see the way she sees herself.
Yeah.
Like, this, Roxy really thinks she's this impressive.
Yeah.
And when
She
she's
really
coming up,
does. She thinks she is
her name in
Kim
lights.
Kardashian.
And the whole spoken word thing where she's like, it starts with her making mama laugh, and then it goes into her fantasizing like, oh, this vaudeville routine where she's doing like comedy bits while
Yeah.
she's dancing, and then it transitions, and then she does the whole thing with the audience, like, they love me for loving them, and I
Yeah.
love them for loving me, and we love each other.
Yep.
That's because none of us got enough
'Cause
love in our childhoods.
we
Like,
really
come
didn't.
on,
I'll tell you
great,
what.
amazing,
Great. Amazing.
so
Absolutely.
good. She sells it. The thing is again, has that balance of uh of of comedy in there. It had to be towards the top for me. So, what did you have at number 2?
We both reach for the gun.
Oh man, we're like, no spoilers for the rest of my list. We'll get there in a second, but elaborate.
Well, it's another one that I can't get out of my head. I sing it all the time. And it's just iconic seeing him treat Renee Zellweger as his puppet. Richard Gere treating
Billy Flynn, yeah.
Yes, Billy Flynn using Roxy Hart as a puppet. I mean, it's absolutely hysterical. The makeup was done so well to make her look like a puppet, and I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mute shit. Sorry.
It's all good. It's
I'll
all
have
good.
to edit it.
We all cough. It's fine. No, number 2. Exactly. Everybody poops too. I'm hurt.
Yeah. I didn't.
I didn't yet. Not now. Before we record
After the
it,
show.
I have to clean up after. No, I have a toddler in the house, so it's like we're
Okay.
dealing with lots of that, but not here, not in this room. Number 2, I had
Number 2. Talking about
the
poop.
transition.
Number 2.
Wow, we did not even plan that.
You can write that down.
Number 2, I had Cell Block Tango for all the
Okay.
reasons that we talked about, for all the reasons you said, for all the reasons Kai said. Like, it's iconic, and it's the image I used when I posted on Blue Sky, like, hey, now watching for podcast prep, and posted that one shot of the backdrop, and people were like, yeah, I get it. It's Chicago.
That's awesome.
It's very clear that that's what it is, and all those stories are so funny. The one that always resonates with me, that has the funniest like payoff at the end, because they all have the like, he ran into my knife 10 times, or he saw himself alive and I saw him dead, and all that stuff.
Yes, exactly.
I like
the some guys can't hold their arsenic.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
I like the fire 2 warning shots into his head.
Yes.
And it's that slow delivery of that where she's like, that son of a bitch, I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. My only regret is I couldn't have killed him twice.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it had
which
to
is
be
also a line from Roxy's Trial.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. Number 1, what do you have?
All that jazz. I mean, come on. You knew it was coming.
I did. I did know it was coming.
Yeah, because I mean, it's my favorite number of the whole damn thing, because it's what I sing at karaoke. It set it up for me. It drew me in. It made me want to watch it so bad. It made me want to be on the stage. It made me want to matter.
No, it's an obvious choice. It's a good one. It's an obvious choice because it's a good choice. So that makes sense. I had
to go be obvious.
It's fine. People probably heard like 4 episodes where I picked the obvious thing before this. So we both reached for the gun at number 1.
Okay.
And everything you said, I think the choreography of him controlling Roxy like she's a puppet, and like she goes limp when he starts talking, and the editing between the press conference and everything there, all the reporters on strings, where'd you come from? Like,
Mississippi.
Yeah, all of that. I think it's also so much fun to sing, which is a big thing for me. It feels like it's a style of song that feels like it would have come out of that era. Like, it does feel like 1920s. The reveal late in the song, late in the number, that not only is he on stage, working Roxy and getting Roxy to say what he wants and controlling her, how she's perceived, he's up top controlling all of them too. That was where the moment I was like, oh, this is genius.
And of course, I agree completely, and I'm an NSYNC fan, so I saw No Strings Attached and got very excited.
Yeah. Was that the same year or the year before when
I think they were around the same year.
Yeah, it was around the same time. Yeah, Life-Size Puppets were in around the early 2000s, I guess. I guess so.
Yeah.
And then that one part where the tempo changes.
Yes.
Where it's like, God, I had it and I lost it. Oh yes, we both. Oh yes, we both. Oh yes, we both. Reach for the gun. Like, where it speeds up in the middle. Come on.
Yeah.
So much fun. This is one of those soundtracks. That's why I think it was a great one to win Best Picture. This is one of those soundtracks that, whether you were like into musical theater, whether you're like a theater kid, or you just like movies or whatever, this is one of those soundtracks that like transcended. Like, oh, it went past just people that are into the genre.
Absolutely.
And it was everywhere, and it was mainstream, and it had been a while since a musical was that level of mainstream.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could really think of many that have crossed into this level of a phenomenon since Chicago in the last 20 years. Musicals, not animated, not like
no, I know,
or anything.
I mean, I think one that kind of came close was Mamma Mia, because everybody loves ABBA.
So Mamma Mia came close.
Which I still have not seen.
I saw it the other day with my mom. I'm not really big into ABBA, so I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know if it's not necessarily for me. I also have recently realized that I'm not a huge fan of, and I will maybe exclude Moulin Rouge from this, because it was the first time I ever understood that was a thing, of jukebox musicals. I'm just realizing, I'm like, those might not be for me. Like, when I go see a musical, I like to hear an original score, like in Chicago, like in Wicked, like
Yeah.
in, in previous episodes to this, we covered not only Wicked, but also Fiddler on the Roof and The Sound of Music, which was a first time watch for me, which is
I
crazy.
hated Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh,
Ugh.
see, I liked it. As a kid, I was like, this is boring. But as an adult, I'm like, this is moving. And I like this guy. He's fun.
Huh. Okay.
But I do think it's not a movie that works for kids. Like, I think you're like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, he wants to like, he wants to be a rich man. He's got these daughters who want to get married. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
As a kid, it doesn't have appeal. But I think that Chicago is one of those that really kind of cemented itself in film history. Is there anything about this movie that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure we mentioned? Because I feel like we've covered most of it, but maybe you had something in that you wanted to cover.
I can't think of anything. I mean, you kind of pulled out all the questions. So,
Cool.
but to me, what's funny is as we were talking, one of the things that hit me, we were talking about Moulin Rouge and Ewan McGregor. I love him in that role. And then we were talking about Renee Zellweger. And my favorite movie that they did together was Down with Love.
That's a what I'm calling a lost episode of the Crooked Table podcast or whatever, because I recorded Kai and I talked about that on a podcast for like 2 hours, and there was a microphone issue, and it's like
Oh,
not synced up.
so it hurts too much to talk about it again.
So it's not synced up. So it's like the audio is like, I might have to send it to like a friend of mine and be like, can you fix this? Because we both, when Kai and I started dating, there were like 4 movies that we both owned, and that was Down with Love was one of them.
That's
Like
funny.
I had a million movies and she had like, a 10 or something, whatever. Like
That's
a normal person, not every movie that you're like, I love it, I must own it. So
Yeah, you
that
have
was
your own
one.
personal blockbuster.
I sure do.
Yeah.
And it's so cute because now my kids are like, will stand in front of it and like browse it like it's close to getting to a video store, I guess.
That's awesome.
Just look through the shelf. The other thing I wanted to mention that I just saw recently, and then we'll start wrapping up, is The Greatest Showman. That's another one that sort of crossed over. That's another one that was like sing-along screenings of, and it was kind of going mainstream a bit more than most of the musicals had.
And it's the only one where Hugh Jackman made me cry.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so good. And have you seen the behind the scenes
I
of him
haven't.
rehearsing?
No.
Oh my god, him rehearsing it. He has a broken nose, and in the thing, and his doctor was like, you can't really sing until you're healed, and he was like, I don't give a shit. I'm singing from now on. And it just like I kept expecting his nose to bleed, and I just cried like, oh my god, I know what went into this. So it's so good.
Yeah. My 3-year-old son will be like, and I'll be like, all right, hold on a second, and I'll have to play that. It's one of the most played songs on my Spotify now because of him. Normally when we start wrapping up like this, I ask guests to try and sell listeners on the movie that we saw, or recommend some similar movies if they've seen Chicago. Is there anything like other than what we just talked about? Are there any other related movies or anything like that if people saw Chicago and loved it that you'd recommend?
You've stumped me. You should ask this beforehand.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I'll talk about. Well, I did say All That Jazz earlier. I think that's one.
Mm-hmm.
The director of this, Rob Marshall, also has become just a movie musical guy. And he made 9, and he made Into the Woods, and he made Mary Poppins Returns, and then the live action Little Mermaid from a couple of years ago. So he's just, if you want more Rob Marshall, there are those. Honestly, I feel like the best answer is what you just said. I feel like if you want more Renée Zellweger doing cool stuff in like a period setting, Down with Love. Go see Down with Love.
Was so good. I mean,
I'm
and
never
go see
gonna.
Moulin Rouge too. I mean,
Yeah.
what a mercy! Like, just so good. And now I want to go watch Down with Love again because I mean, they just were so good in the role, and like you said, it was a period piece, and so yeah, those I guess are the two: is go watch Moulin Rouge and Down with Love.
No, good call. I think I'm never going to turn down an opportunity to recommend Down with Love. And that happens like if it ever pops up on social media or whatever, I'm always like, okay, cool. I need to share this and be like, stump for this movie. Cool. So yeah, I think we about covered it.
Yeah.
The famous Ashley Grant, thank you for coming on to discuss 2002 Chicago. Can you tell the people where they can find you on social media?
I'm Famous Ashley Grant on all the socials. I may not be that as the handle, but if you search for Famous Ashley Grant, you'll still find me. And famousashleygrant.com is my website. So let's be bluggy friends.
Awesome. Meanwhile, find more episodes like this wherever you get your podcasts and on crookedtable.com. Show your support on Patreon, patreon.com/crookedtable. Or if you want to keep up with us on social media, that'll be at Crooked Table on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. We'll be back next episode with another movie musical. But for now, that's a wrap on another Crooked Table production. Keep watching, everybody.